They say there's always two sides of the story. How did you meet Dad, Mom?
Off track.
How did you meet Dad?
When I was in college and in a sorority, we were going to have a steak fry.
A steak fry?
Yes.
Okay.
And you had to invite a young man to be your escort.
What was the theme of the party? What was the name of the party?
It was just a steak fry.
Just steak fry?
It was out at, what was the name of the park? Elmwood?
I think it was, yeah.
At Elmwood Park.
Oh,
So I asked a guy there in the journalism department,
Tell Daddy.
because I was more or less going steady with the guy at home and he couldn't come down for it.
Was it Amos?
And so I asked Amos, and Amos said yes, and so he said he had a friend who had a car. Amos did not have a car. And could I get a date for his friend? And so I had a sorority mother, I was her daughter, and Lou, an Italian girl from down in the Italian community in Omaha. And so I asked her if she would be the friend's blind date, and she said yes. So we went to the steak fry, and that was fine. Then the sorority dance came up, same problem. I was in the sorority, and I asked Amos again if he would go with me to the sorority dance, and he said he couldn't because that was the night that he worked for the World Herald at the drag races. What kind of races?
Cleveland Park. They were car races.
Car races, you know, the old junk cars. And he couldn't go because that was his night to go and report on
What
that.
was the name of this dance that you...
A sorority.
What was the name of the dance? What was the theme?
I have no idea.
That was... Okay.
It was a spring formal.
Okay.
Anyway, so he said, but why don't you ask Bob? So I called Bob down where he was working for Phillips and asked him if he would go to this dance, and he said yes. So he came. I was living in an apartment with Mrs. Freeman then on Farnham, and he came out, he came to the door, and he wasn't carrying a corsage. Okay. So I go out in the car, and there it is, sitting in the seat between us. He never did offer it to me, so I took it and pinned it on myself. Then we went to this dance with my friends, and we started drinking. He did pay for the drinks, as I remember. And the more he drank, the better dancer he thought he was, and the worse he got.
Oh.
No more watermelon, all gone.
I can't really remember. Did we go over to Rosalie's house first
I know, I ate it. It's in my stomach.
for drinks before we went to the dance?
What?
If we did, I don't
I know I
know.
ate it.
I don't really remember whether we did or not. But anyway,
Why not? Okay.
then
You need to share stuff.
I think he did know enough, or Amos told him, that if a girl takes you to a sorority affair, you really kind of owe her. So you should take her to a movie or something. So I guess she called me and asked me out again. And I don't remember what we did. Went to a movie? Did something.
So I ate it. I'm sorry.
And we started dating. And it was in the spring, so it wasn't too long after that you had to report because you were entering the Army. And
Yeah.
so
No, it's okay. You're not being mean.
I don't remember how it all went. I went home and broke up with Jean.
No, it's okay.
And
Now you're sharing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I ate the bread.
Was Jean pretty heartbroken?
oh, absolutely. Everybody I broke up with was heartbroken. And I just couldn't do that to Bob because he was such a sweet, nice boy.
Can I have some of that corn?
Pretty shy and dumb, but sweet and nice.
So technically, what you told me in this whole story is technically your first move was to be in Bob's back seat.
No, I don't want it. I want the corn.
No,
yes, with Amos.
Yes, you're
You
right.
sure were.
With Amos.
You were Bob's back seat, weren't you? So technically, you like Bob's back seat, didn't you?
And
corn too.
then he went in. Then he went into the service, and he went to Fort Sill. He went into the service, and he went to Fort Sill. And then he was going to bring some of the guys that went into service with him were at Fort Sill doing basic, and he was going to have his brother bring his car down, and I guess you charged them for bringing them back. And so, and I went with him. I went with John. But we sent John home on a bus. Probably that would have been my best option, but I didn't. I came home with a whole carload of these guys who were coming home for leave after basic. And then he proposed to me, and we went out to see my folks, and I remember he sat there and said to my dad, "Well, I would like to marry your daughter."
And he said, dun, dun, dun.
And he said, "Are you asking or telling me?"
I didn't
He
eat
said,
any of
dun,
them.
dun, dun. Weird.
This
Yeah,
guy
she's
didn't
finding
eat
this guy
all
on
of them.
Robbie. Gonna talk to
Did
her?
I eat all of them? Where's this? What is that by my butt? I'm sorry.
So, where we left off before that commercial, Robert just asked David
So
if he could
then
marry
he
him.
went,
And he said no.
over, then he
Come here, no butt. Let me fix your pants.
went back and reported after his leave, and he went overseas to Japan. And I finished school.
Turn back around here and look at
Neighbor
them.
says I just wanted to.
There was a guy in the journalism school whose name was Bernie Becker,
Diego's also
and he had a girlfriend who went to Duchesne.
Oh.
And the Duchesne was a private school for girls, and they were very strict. And on weekdays, she had to be in at 6 o'clock. And on weekend nights, she had to be in at 8, which left the whole evening. He was a wonderful dancer. He just loved to dance. And his father was a cattleman from western Nebraska, so he had plenty of money to spread around. And so I would go out with him,
When I take naps, I do.
especially on weekends after 8 o'clock, because the girl had to be in the dorm, and he was free for the evening. And we used to go over to Carter Lake and drink and dance.
What was that other thing they did?
So you call it dance, huh?
Yeah, I call it dance. And then so that was,
Did you have something to
and
drink?
then when I graduated from Creighton, Mrs. Freeman, who I lived with, had a son who was an attorney for Mutual of Omaha. And his very good friend,
Thank you. I
I
love
remember his first name, his second name was Chamberlain,
you.
was in HR. So he said, "Go over and talk to him." So I went over there, talked to him, and he hired me to go to work on the magazine they sent to their salesmen. And I went to work at Creighton, at Mutual United of Omaha. And Bob came back.
You were the editor of the Creighton Crotonian or something like that.
What?
Weren't you the editor of the Creighton?
I was the first Protestant girl to be editor of the university paper, the Crotonian.
So what would have been normal? It would have been a male But what
Well,
religion?
it really wasn't until really in 49, 50 that they started opening up to girls. Well, a lot of girls came in. But during the war years in the 40s, they had opened up the university to girls.
What was it before that? An all
It
male?
was pretty much all male.
Was it a Jesuit?
Jesuit, it is Jesuit. And they did have a girl editor
Before you?
before me. She
So
was
you weren't the
Catholic.
first. You were
She
the
was
second?
Catholic. They did have a Protestant before me. That was Amos, was the Protestant. And then I always wanted to be society editor. And once a year we had this banquet and what have you, and they announced the staff. Well, twice a year. It changed twice a year. And I always wanted, I had to be editorial chief, which I really didn't want. And I was news editor once, which, okay. But I always wanted to be the society editor. I thought that was the plum for a girl. And the year that I went, that I thought I was a senior, I was ready for it, what have you. They announced the society editor, and it wasn't me, and I was just heartbroken. Then because they always name the editor last, and I was editor-in-chief, and I could not believe it. I could not believe it.
I'm gonna eat the whole thing.
No!
Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, come here. Thank you. I appreciate you making the food. Get a kiss. Give a hug. Take that back to your daddy and say it was delicious.
Daddy, it was delicious for Papa.
It was delicious for Papa.
Oh, yeah.
So that was my career. He got home and...
So you got to boss around the society editor.
Got it right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was head of the whole thing.
So was it better? That was better than being a society editor?
Oh, yeah.
So your heart was
It was
broken
the
that-
top job, you know. Looked good on my resume, although they didn't really have resumes in those days. And then he came home and we got married.
And you working
And
for
he went back to
Mutual of
school and I
Omaha?
stayed on at Mutual United of Omaha for 2 years until he graduated. And then we moved to North Carolina.
Yes.
And he started his career. And I looked for a job down there, and the terrible part was, it was the South, and in those days they didn't pay women much, and they wanted me to know I had 2 years experience, and they wanted to pay me less than I started right out of college, and I didn't want to do it. And
Work 6 days a week.
yeah, and they wanted me to work 6 days a week. So Bob said, well, this is how much I make a month. Here's the checkbook. If you can make it go, don't go back to work. Well, shortly after that, we got transferred anyway. We went to Fayetteville.
It was a year later, almost.
Well,
May.
and we went to Fayetteville, and I didn't ever go back to work. I became a professional volunteer.
And a mother.
And a mother. Got pregnant there and with Jane, and had Jane there at Cape Fear Valley. And then we moved to Richmond, and I had Alan. And then each time Bob had to take thyroid to make his sperm more active, so we thought we had a built-in contraceptive. Didn't work. We went to Bartlesville and I got pregnant with you. However, before you were born, we got transferred to New Jersey, and my son Rob was born in Morristown on the 4th of July.
But so the way that you just spoke about your children, the way you emphasized Rob really loud, That's one you love the most, right? I mean, if we wanted to really get down to brass tacks, you don't have to say.
That's what they all say, you know.
Your emphasis in your voice said it all. That's okay.
I'm mother's favorite, right?
That's right.
They all believe that. That's great. Anyway.
Or are you saying Rob was a mistake?
I will say that he has led us a merry chase. And when we lived in Basking Ridge, we rented this house. And there was a part off from a little sunroom this man had built on for his plumbing business, and I made it into a playroom for the children. And I don't remember, I don't think it was air conditioned, and so we had to open the windows to do things and what have you, and I went into the playroom and Rob was gone, and he was the great escape artist, because when we had a playpen and they used to have wood floors, and he figured out how to open them up and crawl underneath and crawl out. So, and then he found out how to, well, he broke out the slats in the crib, so I had to take him out of the crib. Rob was born allergy prone and ended up in the hospital in Morristown. And I went in about the second day and they had this net over the top of the crib. And I said, why is that there? And they said, well, he crawls out and he hit your head on the floor because you kept crawling out of it and what have you. And anyway, we had this playroom and it had a window in it. And it was so far off the floor. And he managed to kick out the screen and get the screen out and crawl out that window, and it was off the ground quite a bit. I mean, he just hung there in the window and dropped down to the floor. Well, we had a creek about a block down the street from us, and I called the police and said, you know, this kid's not here, he's gone, and I'm afraid we all ran to the creek to see if he had gone down to the creek to play, because that would have been a very inviting play. And he weren't, so coming back up the street, I looked at the front porch, and here you're sitting on the steps. So I, of course, hugged you, and I was so relieved and what have you, and went in, and I hadn't realized what you had done. I didn't know how you had gotten out of the house. So we went in the house, and you immediately took off for that room, and when you got in there, you climbed up on that sill, you were going to do it again.
That's when she beat your ass.
Yeah. No, I locked the window down, but I thought, egads. When he knocked the slats out of the playpen, I thought, well, I'll push it over here against this. There was a stairway going up from the outside to this room, and then the plumber had for his office. So I pushed it over there, and you figured out how to use those steps to climb up till you could finally get over the top of that playpen and get out. And I said, that playpen is history, because he knows he can figure out how to get out of that every which way. I mean, that's history. So,
He was your great escape artist.
yes, he was.
Skylar. Huh?
All right, we'll give you a break and then we'll tape some more in a little bit.
You wanna play?